Good morning. It's Monday, April the 15th, and this is Overheard Overnight. I'm Chris Morales. Or is that Chris Michaels, the alter ego I came up with because I wanted to fit in? I felt that having that, you know, immigrant last name, Morales, is going to be a tough one. So I needed to fit in because, folks, it's a white world. And that's the topic for today. Fitting in into a white world, or is it? I grew up in Jamaica, and even there, I didn't feel that I fit in. I liked rock and roll music. Grew up listening to Led Zeppelin, Jefferson Airplane, and my favorite album of all at the time still is Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, Deja Vu. Didn't listen to reggae music. Didn't find reggae until much later, well into my adult years when I went back to Jamaica to do the reggae marathon. Now, we came to Canada first in 1967. We came for Expo. It was the 100th year of Canada as a nation. And Trudeau, yep, Justin's dad, he had proclaimed that Canada was a multicultural country. Well, 5 years later, when we immigrated, much of the country still had not received that memo. Very much a very, I won't say segregated. That's not quite the word. There was segregation. There was discrimination, of course, but it was much, much, much of a white world. And if you give me just a second here, I got to pick up Milo because he wants to participate with us this morning. And here he is. There we go. Milo, say good morning. Okay, now sit down. Coming to Canada, it really wasn't all about multiculturalism back in 1972. We got here in June, and I spent the summer listening to Q107, a famous announcer back in the day called John Donaby. And he and I got together that summer, and I listened to him to try and figure out how to speak Canadian. Wanted to speak Canadian because that was the only way I thought that I was going to be able to make it through high school. My sisters were in grade school. I was at Clarkson Secondary, and didn't know a lot of people there other than a cousin who happened to live in the neighborhood with us. So we get to Clarkson and stand out, didn't fit in, did my best to fit in. Now, I wasn't part of the cool kids when I grew up in Jamaica, and I sure wasn't part of the cool kid gang when we were in high school. I was in the photography club. I joined the yearbook committee. I could see the cool kids over there. We sat in the same lunchroom together, but certainly didn't feel one of the cool kids. From there, I moved up to Kitchener to go to school, Waterloo actually first, to university and then college. And, met my wife to be at that point and exposed to a very non-Jamaican family, let's put it that way, and learned an awful lot about different styles of eating and food. One thing that struck me, though, as someone from outside is, boy, there wasn't a lot of seasonings. And I'll never forget my first exposure to white gravy. No idea what that was. At school, though, one of the things that I did very quickly at university was get into the broadcasting game by joining the local on-campus radio station and wanted to be an announcer, a DJ guy. That transition to the broadcast school, just to give you the background. But one of the things that I learned in broadcast school was how to talk white. And I hate to say it that bluntly, but that's what it was. It's a Midwestern accent that we were taught because that's what people wanted to hear in radio, in television, in all of the broadcast media back in those days. Again, as I mentioned, the memo for multiculturalism was eking its way through the system, but hadn't kind of gotten there just yet. Came out of broadcasting. First job really was as an announcer, and that's where the Chris Michaels guy comes in. He's the alter ego who is the Canadian. The last name Morales just sounded too ethnic. By the way, I tried once a number of years prior to that to change my last name. Had that conversation with my dad. Didn't end well from my perspective, but I did keep the last name. And as you'll see towards the end of this today, I'm so proud of it today. But back in the day, it certainly was something to be concerned about. From Kitchener, moving on to the advertising world. And if you have seen, if you've been part of the Mad Men TV series. That's very much what the ad industry was like in Toronto, anyway, back in early 80s. It was the end of the Mad Men era, mind you. It wasn't quite as extreme as it looks on the television series. But certainly it was a very white world, both in the agency world and in the media and the commercials and everything that we put forward to consumers. And you're going to ask yourself, how did a guy with the last name Morales end up in a white business? And one of the things that has driven me, I guess, since well back coming into Canada was I felt I had to work harder to show that I fit in, that I was not the stereotype immigrant coming to the country. I had to work harder to try and make people feel that I had fit in. Fit in has been a real issue for me all along, and it's been part of some of the issues I talked about last week, with the mental health. But certainly worked in that industry for many years and did okay. Thanks very much. Along the way, met a lot of clients who were not so concerned about this white privilege. And we'll transition to that because that's kind of the thing that's been, nagging at me for the last little while. I had a conversation recently. I'll start there. I had a conversation recently, maybe 6 months ago, about what it's like to be an outsider looking in and trying to understand and appreciate white privilege. And the only way I can really described it then, and I'll stick with it today, is that if you're white, if you are identifying in that group, you don't understand white privilege. You don't know what that means. Let me give you a story to illustrate. The conversation went like this. Well, my dad didn't come from anything. He had to work hard to achieve his success. And everything he achieved, he worked hard to get it. Family support is how he got there. My dad did the exact same thing. Yet we were gaps apart in terms of the socioeconomic system in Canada and the wealth or income levels in Canada. Two men, one not white, immigrant from outside the country, one white, and they both work hard. They both have family support, but there's still a gap. My white friend didn't get it. May never. And why would you? Because you're in it. You don't feel it's a privilege. That's your world. I had dinner on the weekend, and family, both sides, immigrants, both sides, with Guyanese, Jamaican, there's Irish in there, there's probably some Black from Africa mixed in it, all of this as well, big stirring pot. And I'm sitting around and I'm watching the kids, the grandkids as well play. And I had a moment there where I went, those those moments where you just get it. And I thought, here are all these kids in this swirling whirlpool of DNA, basically. Their backgrounds all mixed up. And they are the future. They are here today, and they are going to make this country. And all those white privilege conversation just simply go away because they don't see it any other way. And I felt so proud. And so to answer the question, Chris Morales, do I feel like I fit in? Probably never will feel like I absolutely fit in to anything, anywhere, anytime. But I don't have to. All I really need to do is understand that the individuality, I hate to say melting pot, but the complete coagulation, that's not even the right word either, of cultures and attitudes works. And I felt proud after that session on Sunday. One last thing for today, I'd like to acknowledge Ackley from last week who left a comment on YouTube, and it's really why I get up in the mornings on Monday and try and do these things. He said after last week's conversation about mental health, and I'll do my best to quote it here, "I needed to hear this more than you know, Chris." And I want to thank you for that, Ackley. That certainly made my day last week, and I'm glad that I was able to at least put something forward that potentially helped you as well. So until next time,